My energy hype squad, or your energy hype squad, is supposed to be that crew of people that reminds you when you forget why you're doing this. Why you're like, they have your history with you, or they know your future with you, right? They are there to hype you up. They're help to hold you accountable. They're help you to keep you with your values alignment, and really help you with that first future version of yourself. They're there to help you navigate through the tough stuff. And honestly, if you've ever been a hype squad for someone else, you know how freaking good this feels to do this for someone else.
Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Well, Small Steps, Big Wins family, you are in for a treat today. I am joined by Stacey Kulunowski. Did I pronounce it right?
Kulongowski, very
Kulongowski.
close.
I was close. She is a powerhouse leader, a best-selling author of the book titled Bring Your Own Energy, and founder of the BND Group. With a rich background as a former director at Google and a certified executive coach, Stacey empowers leaders to break through barriers and achieve extraordinary success. And I would include in there, you do not have to be a leader to read her book and to break through barriers and achieve extraordinary success. I read her book and I got a lot out of it, and I enjoyed it very, very much. I am definitely not quite a leader yet, and I'm not sure I have achieved extraordinary success. So I want to make that clear. The book is for anybody who wants to break through and change the trajectory of their life. So welcome, Stacey. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, sure. I read your book. Like I said, I was fascinated by the challenges that you faced while you were working at Google. And you also had a diagnosis in there, which I'm going to let you tell your story about that. And I want you also to weave in there, your book, if I remember correctly, came out of your experiences. So
yes.
Take it away.
That sounds great. So thank you. I wrote Bring Your Big Energy because it was what I needed when I was out there at what I call an intensity point in the world. So an intensity point, as I define it in the book, is a place where you have severe trauma, or you could just have some life-altering change that makes you consider everything that you have in the well-worn path in front of you, and you get to decide and have the power how you move forward. So I was at Google. I was an executive there, a director leading a large-scale sales team. And I loved my role, but it was very, very hard, especially during COVID, to be able to inspire and to lead teams through this crazy environment. And I happened to be leading the Canadian team, and their economy just didn't bounce back at the same way, in the same rate. So I think the challenge for me, and the biggest intensity point where I came to writing the book and looking for something like this, which is real world experiences as well as exercises and tools, was I kind of had a mental thing. Right. And so I got to burnout, and I was very overwhelmed. I felt very stuck, and I took time to take care of myself for my mental health. And I took a 6-month leave from Google, which for me was a very unheard of thing. Not that I didn't feel supported in doing so, but I'm a goer, I'm a doer, I'm an achiever, go, 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 win, 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 climb higher, do more. And so for me, that intensity point of leaving Google and giving myself that permission was really where Bring Your Big Energy was born out of. So during that time, that 6 months, lots of therapy, lots of different things, I started to actually build the Spark process, which we'll talk about later in the book. And it became a tool for me, which is both framework and soul of how to redefine yourself. And I started using it, and then I thought, well, gosh, maybe this will help others if I write a book. And then it became, maybe it'll help others through my coaching and workshops. And now it's just exploded, which has been so exciting. But that's sort of how it was born.
Cool. So you start the book out with asking ourselves the question, what do you want? And well, actually, you go a lot into your history, and you had a cancer diagnosis in there as well, and how you overcame that. But you started with the question, what do you want? And I'd like to read a quote from the book. I want your thoughts on it. So the quote is this: my hypothesis, meaning your hypothesis, my hypothesis is that we all experience some degree of confusion about what we truly want and how to fight for it. So that was it was in chapter 5 on abandon and unplug, but I just thought it was a fascinating quote that we all experience some degree of confusion. And me personally, when I try and answer that question, what do I want? I thought there was something wrong with me because I have a difficult time answering that. So I want you to dive into your thoughts behind what do we want and the confusion that might surround it and maybe how we can overcome that.
Yeah, I love that question. So for me, it came from my personal journey. So you said the cancer thing. I think it even started earlier than that, right? I grew up in a tiny town. I graduated with 33 people. And I was kind of on this search of like, what's next? And I was like, just looking at the world, what's out there. And it sort of looked like you went to college, you got a job, you got married, you had kids, you climbed the ladder, and on, right? And so I did that because I wasn't sure, just figured that's what you did. And that's how you got out of a small town. And that's how you kind of built your life. And so for me, when I got to this intensity point of having cancer, which I kept very private the first time, which led to a lot of my mental health situation things, it was really about like, why am I chasing this so hard, right? Like, why am I ignoring this cancer thing and not sharing this cancer thing because I'm so worried about getting promoted at work? Like, what is wrong with me, right? And so I think from what I saw more and more is people need clarity to overcome their confusion. And what happens is people get, I was seeing it time and time again with myself and others, is people get stuck or overwhelmed, not because they're lazy or they're not focused, it's just they're unclear what they want, right? So they have these misguided goals like I did myself, which are societal norms, or you want better for your life or better for your kids or family expectations. And instead of choosing those consciously for ourselves, we just have those put upon us and we just kind of go all in on that. And as such, we don't have the ability or the permission for ourselves to go all in on the things that do matter and find our why and fight for that. And so that's why I talk a lot about in the book about abandoning. The abandon chapter, which you quoted, is all about releasing that noise, right? Letting go of that need for following the right path, doing the right thing, right? And giving yourself that permission to be a bit unconventional and really dig into what your success plan is and what success looks like for you. I know we talked earlier about having your success statement and calling your shot, right? And I think the thing about that is during self-reflection and purpose is you start to feel very alive because you're very aligned and your eyes are wide open around like existence if we want to go too high, but really just around what comes next. And I think one of the other hard things for people here is, I talk about this in the book as well, is the crab in the pot analogy. If there's a pot of crabs and there's a bunch of crabs in there, if one crab tries to get out, the other crabs will pull that crab back down, right? Yeah. And that's what happens in society. I feel like it's like, oh, you're going to go write a book, Stacey? You're going to leave corporate America? Yeah. Like, why would you do that? My financial and planner, God love him, included. But it is really hard to be unconventional and to follow a why that isn't that kind of strict, well-worn path that everyone is used to. So anyway, I digress. But the power of transformation of clarity, I think, is really what it's about here. And abandoning those needs to do what others think you should do is, I think, the first step in really transformation.
How did you overcome the inertia of the people around you who are like, you're going to write a book? I can't believe you're writing a book, or just being that crab that's crawling out of the pot.
Yeah.
How'd you get out? Like, how did you
Well, there's
not
a couple
listen?
ways, right? So one way is get in a different pot, right? Like, so I surround myself by amazing people. Like my bench, my energy hype squad is amazing. Like,
I want to talk about that too. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I want to talk about the energy. I have a question on that later.
Yes.
On your energy hype squad, because I thought that was just a cool terminology, but I digress. We'll come back to that. But it's like, it's who you surround yourself with matters. Okay, that's the first one. What else did you do to get yourself out of what everybody thought you should do?
Well, and I think it's like saying it out. Well, number one, what's the cost of not, right? And so when you get to an intensity point, you're like, what is the cost of? Because when I was leaving Google, I could either stay at Google and get another big job there. I could go to another tech player and get a big job there. I could build my own thing. And the cost for me was like the cost of staying in a big job like that right then at that point in my life, not that I'll never go back, was pretty high, right? Mentally, family-wise, all of that stuff. So number one was the cost. But number two, I think just saying it out loud, and I know that sounds really, and it started as a whisper, like, hey, I think I'm going to write a book, or hey, I think I'm going to like launch my own company. And it was those little people that were like along the way, Wow, that's so cool. Tell me more, right? It was just practicing and trying it on. And I had to practice and try it on from a whisper to a fact of I got on stage for my book launch event here in Northville last month. And I was like, my MC was like, what's your limit this year? And I'm like, limitless. My limit is limitless because why
Yeah.
would I put a ceiling on myself, right?
Love
And
that.
that's a very far way to go. That's a big arc. But I think the more you say it out loud and the more you validate yourself and the more validation you see from others, my book is a hybrid published book. So I had to crowdsource some of the funding for it. So I needed people to believe in and invest in me. And 300 people did, which is
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of people,
Yeah.
right? And so that's a lot of people to go from, wow, you're leaving this big Google job or whatever that I felt so defined by to be like, this is the coolest thing. And you are going to inspire people and change lives. And
Yeah.
that's what I get to do. It's a very powerful way to move through it.
Wow. So you could have gone back to a corporate job and you might still do that, but you took the leap to do what you're doing. Talk about any of fear or hesitation that was around that and how you overcame that because you started with asking yourself the why. And then once you start leaning into that purpose that's different than what you're currently doing, I don't know. Me personally comes up with that. I don't know if I really should do that. There's that fear factor involved. So talk a little bit about that and how it affected you and what you did to kind of mitigate that voice.
Yeah, I wish I knew the author of this, but there's a quote that it says, "Make your vision so clear that fear is irrelevant." And I think that's what I root myself in all the time, over and over. I still have fears. I still some days I'll be like, "What am I doing?" Right? And I even give myself deadlines, and we'll get to my like second cancer diagnosis, which was a minute and a half ago, right? That
Oh, wow.
happened while I was like writing the book. But even then, going through treatment, this and that, I said to my husband, I said, I think maybe after I launch this, I think maybe I just go back to work. And he was like, you're just getting started. Like, why would you do that? And so it's that fear, but it's also like people believing in you. But I think my biggest thing, I think releasing the fear was moving from a scarcity mindset to one of abundance. So once I took the leap and I started my business and I was working through what that looked like and starting to get clients and starting to get the work or not get the work, you're surprised where the work comes from that you don't expect to come from. And then the things you really count on don't renew the next year. So it's a little bit more volatile than a very stable paycheck at a corporate American job. But I think just knowing that and keeping rooting in the abundance of it, no matter where it comes from, it's going to come if you're putting good work out there, and just reminding yourself that, because it's very easy, especially as a small business owner, to get rooted in the scarcity, like when's your next dollar going to come from? So I think my business partner and I always say we don't chase, we attract. And I think just pivoting that mindset and reminding yourself over and over. But I do still have fears. I do still have fears,
Sure.
and that's
Sure.
very normal. And I have to like remind myself and do some meditation work and reframing. And that seems to work well for me as I
Yeah.
practice it over.
I think that's an important reminder. You said that, the fears are going to be there.
Yeah.
And we all have them. It's what you do with them. You can either give into them or you can, like you said, look for evidences of success and borrow other people's belief. That's been somewhat of a catchword lately. If I don't have this belief in myself, I'm going to borrow it from others. When I wrote my book, same thing. And when I was going through personal transformation, it's like you go through this. I can't believe I can turn into somebody else because I've been this person for so long. But then other people see that potential in you. And then you just borrow that belief. So you borrowing the belief from others, taking it, making it your own and owning it sounds like allowed you to silence some of that fear, live alongside of it. And I love making your vision so big that fears are irrelevant. I've heard variations of that. I've never heard it said that way before. So I think it's a great mantra to repeat. But then again, you've got to get that clarity, right? And you've got to ask yourself, why are you doing that? In that question, why? Peel it back just a few more layers. So like, what do you want? What are some other questions someone can ask themselves to kind of peel back that onion to get a little deeper, to get more clarity on what you want?
I think some good exercise are like I do it, I think it's in the book too, is like igniters and drainers, right? So I think just taking like a little audit of your life and saying like, okay, when I'm doing what things am I getting lit up, right? When I'm doing what things am I getting drained? What do I need to unplug, right? And so I think that that deep reflection part comes before the why. And that's another thing with big energy. When I was out there in the wild, like looking for a tool for myself, everything was like purpose forward. And I was like, wait, if we don't even know where we've have been, how do we know where we're going, right? And so I think doing that deep reflection to really understand and take that energy audit of what's working well and what's not working well is, I think, really one of the key pieces as well. And just listening and paying attention and reflecting. And I do a lot of this with my coaching clients is between sessions, I'll say, okay, go try on these 3 or 4 experiences, the homework you've given yourself, but really it's like stay rooted in reflection and pay attention to when you're doing these things. Is it lighting you up? Is it draining you? Or I'll often ask the question to people, okay, if I told you, Sue, your podcast was done tomorrow, would you feel relief or sad, or like what would your body feel? Or would you feel, you'd be devastated, right? I don't know. I don't want to assume, but there's like this happiness versus sadness and I think if we start to really listen to our body and give ourselves that space, we can really get very square on the answers are all there and the indicators are all there, but I just don't really think we're listening.
Yeah, it's asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you said my podcast is done tomorrow, I would be sad. I talk to other people who podcast, and once you start doing it, if it's something that is in your zone of genius that you love doing, you can't imagine life without it. And it's funny, my producer said to me the other day, he's like, you have to stop recording. You have so many episodes in inventory. I said, but I love talking to people. They keep coming to me. I have these amazing conversations and I meet these authors and I want to bring their stories to the world so that somebody else can benefit from what they have learned.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's it. So that's what
It's
lights me up.
in that, yes, absolutely. And you might work 14 hours a day on your podcast and forget to eat, to feed the dog, to all the things, right? And that's the space I'm in. Like my husband will be like, "Did you eat today?" I'm like, "I don't think so." That's the space you start to get in and the flow you start to get
That's
in.
funny. I'm not quite there.
Yeah.
I hit record. I talk to people. I have great conversations, and then that's what my producer's for.
Yeah,
But
that's
I
true.
used to do
That
that.
is true.
I used to do that. Well, I think let's walk into your 5-step Spark process.
Yes.
How'd that come about for you? And the 5 components of Spark, that's an acronym, SPR. Nope, SPARK. There we go. Self-reflection, purpose, abandon, results, and kinetic energy. So let's
So this was self-created. I was seeing more and more consistent patterns with myself and others. And what I was seeing was people were really craving change, but they actually did not know how to start or ignite, as I call it. People that had bigger titles had even bigger burnout, people who are successful on paper, but they were really disconnected from their purpose and they were running on fumes. And I was one of them at the time, right? And so it became this framework to rebuild myself and my clients. And I've seen it work for hundreds of people. And it brought both structure and soul to this personal growth kind of this voyage that we go on. And it really works for both reinvention, if you have setbacks, or you simply just trying to get unstuck. So that's sort of the overarching. So the S in Spark is self-reflection. So this is where it all starts. We got to get honest about what's working and what's not and what we've been avoiding. So a lot of times on the other side of overwhelm is avoidance for me. People get overwhelmed, so they avoid, right? So they avoid and they overwhelm. And so then you get caught in this mousetrap, right? Back and forth. So this chapter is really filled with tools and practices that help you listen deeply for your own truth, often for the first time ever for some people, or the first time in a long time. So that's the self-reflection piece. Purpose is the P. And so now once we reflect, we need to reconnect with what really matters most. And so we've talked a little bit about this, but this step really helps you to realign your energy with your values. There's some values exercises in there. There's some mission stuff in there. I do hot pen visualization in there as well, where you just write without self-critic and without self-editing for a large amount of time and see how your life unfolds from a visual standpoint in front of you. And that's what the purpose is. So that's where you start to really understand like what lights you up and what's kind of holding you back or what needs to be unplugged that's draining you. And then the A is abandon. So this is, I always say, like, why are you carrying that luggage into a season you don't need it, right? Like, why are you bringing your winter snowsuit on your summer cruise? Like, this is not what
I
we need
like
to be
that.
doing, right? And so abandon is like, what are the old stories that just aren't true anymore, right? What are the relationships that are no longer
Yeah.
serving me? What are the emotional, like, what are the triggers? What are the things that I need to understand that are really holding me back? Because honestly, usually I see time and time again, the only thing people are held back from their big dreams are themselves, really. I mean, we can find resources, we can find opportunities, we can find the right people. It's really ourselves. So abandoning those stories that say, you can't do this. Why would you do that? Right. And so those ugly voices, I call mine Martha sometimes, like Martha in my ear. Like, we don't need to listen to her. So, abandoning Martha, letting her go, like setting her on sale and then moving forward so it's not
I
distracting.
like that, setting
Yeah.
her on sale.
Yeah, setting her on sale, which is what abandon is. So, and then results, because results, I think we have to know how we know if we're doing well, right? I
Yeah.
just sent a note back to my client this morning who's working on a coaching plan. I said, how will you know if you're making any headway? Like, how will you know if you're doing well, or how will you know it's not enough? Because she was like, I just don't feel like I'm doing enough. I'm like, well, how will you know that, right? Like, how do you
Mhm.
measure? So results is all about like creating goals, designing experiments, helping you to build systems that give you clarity. And we really focus in that chapter on progress over perfection, and action over analysis. So, because really change can only happen when that insight becomes movement, and putting that movement forward one step at a time is where you get those results. So that's the result chapter. And then the K, which is my personal favorite, K is kinetic energy. And this is about authentically living into your power, right? This is about vulnerability. This is about where you're fully owning your own story, integrating the lessons that you've learned throughout the book, and showing up with conviction and leading unapologetically with who you are. And this is about momentum and sustainability and trusting that your energy will bring you forward, and in hopes that too, maybe someday you become an energy magnet. So you're lifting those other crabs out of the pot with you. And so that's what it's all about. So it's not necessarily a linear, it's great done in that order, but it is also a cycle of alignment, right? And that's the beauty of it, is you can come back to it. It's
Mhm.
deeply human. It's very adaptable. That's why I felt it was really important in the book to give examples from
Yeah.
real life people who've done those things in each chapter. So you can see like, oh, this is how this is what this looks like, or this person fell and now they're teaching me how they fell and how they got back up. And I think that's the beauty of it. So that's the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. I love the book in that everything was like practical. There was practical steps, practical applications threaded through the whole book, but you also ask hard questions, which have to get asked, which help draw us out from just that mundane or that easy questions. You go right to the harder ones. For example, the one section was define success.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that. I wrote it. I actually wrote it in the book, and I wasn't even thinking. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to define success. And I often don't feel successful. I don't think I haven't achieved, great, massive amounts of wealth, and my podcast doesn't have 1 million downloads each month, so I don't have that type of success. I don't feel successful. And I wrote out my definition of success, not even really thinking, but just kind of like wrote it out. I got done and I read it back to myself. I'm like, my God, based on my definition, I am successful right now. And it was this eureka style moment where it was very eye opening for me. And what I appreciate is that you're always pointing the reader back to thinking about themselves, caring for themselves. The words they say to themselves matters, and their stories matter. And when you keep going back to that, I think that is where that inertia is going to come from, to overcome the outside voices that tell you you can't do those things or you can't be somebody different. So,
That's so good. You're leaving me thinking there, and I don't know how much I've said about this, but I feel like people think success is a destination when you're saying it's a state of being, because you're not
yes.
stopping because you're successful.
Right.
What a beautiful gift to wake up to that day you wrote that and be like,
Yeah.
wow, I am on the right track. Like, I am in a state of success, in a state of being that is life-giving and flow. And that's what it's all about, versus like, now I'm at the next thing. Now I'm at the next thing. And then you get there and you're like,
Well,
what
what's
is
next?
this?
Yeah. It's like climbing the mountain. You hit the top of the mountain, you go, okay,
Yeah.
now what?
What?
I rather climb. I always say I'd rather climb mountains that have no tops or run races with no end,
Yes.
because it's just out there. You mentioned about authenticity and vulnerability, and those words we hear a lot of. What does authenticity and vulnerability mean to you and the roles that they play in discovering who you are and what you want in life?
Yeah, I think it's like, and I think this is, and I'm not a doctor or whatever, but this I think is linked to imposter syndrome a lot of times for me too, because I think that I firmly believe, in my opinion, not probably highly loved, a lot of times imposter syndrome, we're trying to be something we're not. So that's why we're so uncomfortable. Like we're trying to be something that just doesn't fit us because we're told we're supposed to be it, or that's what we need to do in that moment, right? We have to show up in a certain way. And I think for a lot of years, I felt like I had to show up in a way. And so when I got to Google, the story I was telling myself was like, oh, I was a little towny girl and I grew up in a small town and I had a degree from a Big Ten university, which was such a blessing for me and my family. But I showed up alongside Harvard and Stanford and people who summered in like Greece, like, and I was like, I haven't been out of the country, right? And so I think it was just this sort. So I always had this like veil on of I'm going to be corporate Stacey then, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to work harder because I need to be better and I need to prove myself. And I think I lost a lot of my heart-led, inspirational, motivational me. My big yellow energy was kind of lost because I wasn't being authentic. So for me, authenticity and vulnerability is really the like it's the foundation of discovering your truth and having the vulnerability to open that up and say, like, let me peel back this layer and see if this fits me or not, really opens the door to that change. And it allows us to say, like, this isn't working anymore, or I want something different. And just being honest with ourselves and others. Otherwise we stay stuck, right? Like that again, what is the cost of not saying something? So in the book I talk about hitting my biggest intensity point, which were burnout, illness, and identity loss, right? I had an identity, it was my work identity versus my mom identity and such. And really talk through like we don't have to be perfect, we just need to make progress, right? And focus on being really deeply human instead. So that I think vulnerability and authenticity are like the gateway to that. I mean, it doesn't mean like oversharing too. I think a lot of people are like, oh, you got to come in and give all your dirty laundry. It's really not that. It doesn't mean you have to be messy all the time. Like I still can stand in front of 250 people and carry myself just like I did in corporate version of me, but it means showing up aligned, right? And passionate with integrity and courage and your values and being a version of yourself that can show up at home and at work at that level, I think. And then being able to own your own story as much as you're comfortable with without apologizing, I think is the other piece of authenticity.
Yeah, you talk about owning your story. What was the story that you told yourself or stories that you told yourself that no longer served you, and how did you go about redefining that? And I'm thinking that also ties into your identity as well.
Yeah. I think for me, I told my story like I wasn't good enough, which that's a super popular one. Everyone loves that one. Everyone does that. We all do that to ourselves. I also told my story like you need to do more to be more. Like you got to just do more or you're never going to be more. And now I know that that's not true and I still do a lot, right? I still have a hard time with the off self because I love what I'm doing. That was another story I think that I told myself. And the big story I told myself for a lot of time, which is why I hid my whole cancer journey the first time, which was when I was getting promoted at Google and I was so blessed. I loved my team, loved what I was doing, but the story I told myself is if I told anyone I had cancer, that I was gonna be wasted goods. Like I was like, this is not gonna serve me. And I remember I got a new role, and we were custom building it, we were reorganizing, and it was custom. And I ended up interviewing for and getting that role. And I told my VP secretly, I said, well, I have cancer. I just don't know if I can do this role. Like I think that you're gonna have to give this to someone else. And he's like, but this was your role to own, and you can do this. And he was like, you take all the time you need. He's like, this role was meant for you. We believe in you.
Wow.
Cancer is a thing that you're going to go through, but it doesn't define you as a leader. And so that was a
Wow.
point where I was like, felt like so protected, right? To be like, wow,
Yeah.
I can really do this. And owning it and saying that out loud, I had twice as much support. Between him and my director, I had all kinds of beautiful, and it was behind the scenes. It wasn't showy, flashy, because I didn't want anyone else to know, and they knew that. But behind the scenes, I had a lot of support to help me get through that process. If I wouldn't have said anything, I wouldn't have had that. The second time having cancer, which I just finished my chemotherapy and my second surgeries, which is great. Rang the bell in December, had my last surgery last month. I think in this time I told everyone I have a blog, it's a thing, bring your big pink energy. And it has been such a gift for me to
Yeah.
feel loved and supported and authentic and vulnerable and actually be me. But the number of people who have reached out to me secretly and said, Oh my God, I have crippling anxiety, and I know it's not cancer, but your courage has helped me to get
Yeah.
through it. Or I have
Wow.
MS, and I don't know, I'm not telling anyone. Like all of these like people that are holding all these secrets because they think it's supposed to be this lonely journey, and they can't be authentic because they'll be judged and shamed is really sad. And so
Mm.
I'm hoping that by lifting the veil, that I can help others to be able to be more ownership of their story and have more agency, self-agency on that as well.
Wow, what a beautiful outcome or byproduct of you sharing your story. I don't think we give enough credit to our stories and how they can impact and affect others.
Yeah.
In your book, you talk about, and we mentioned it before, the energy hype squad. So I think this is a good point to bring them in. So talk about what that is and why everyone should have it.
Yes, exactly. So I think so much is like, my mom will love it when she listens to this. She always says, "We don't even know where you came from." Sometimes she goes, because I'm so intrinsically motivated. Like I don't always need the carrot and the stick. I'm not that guy. Like it's just a weird thing that I kind of just was born with, which is really cool and doesn't always serve me, but sometimes it does, right? So in addition, though, I still have times where I'm like, why am I doing this? Why, right? And so my energy hype squad or your energy hype squad is supposed to be that crew of people that reminds you when you forget why you're doing this, why you're like, they have your history with you or they know your future with you, right? They are there to hype you up. They're help to hold you accountable. They're help you to keep you with your values alignment and really help you with that first future version of yourself. They're there to help you navigate through the tough stuff. And honestly, if you've ever been a hype squad for someone else, you know how freaking good this feels to do this for someone else. It is a privilege to walk through something
Hmm.
really, really freaking hard with someone. It's a privilege, right? And so as
Yeah.
a hype squad, it's not always fun and games. It's sometimes the really tough stuff. But in this group I talk about in the book too, I think you need to have a portfolio of people in there, right? So your hype squad might have an inspirer. This is my MC mix. She's always like, let's build it on the moon, right? Like she's that kind of personality, right? Or the challenger, which is like, okay, I like what you're doing here, but financially, like, is this a thing, right? Or the mentor, like, get on more stages before you do more workshops because that's what's better and that's going to scale, right? And I have one of those. Someone who advocates or sponsors you behind the scenes when you're not in those rooms and says,
Mm.
Stacey, I have a lot of these from the book. I just had someone from reach out to me from like a huge company where they're like, I got your name from someone else. We had a meeting and they mentioned you and we want to buy your book and have 50 people come to a workshop.
Wow.
You're gonna, and I didn't even know that person was saying that to me. I met that person once, right? Like, but they
Yeah.
are advocating for me behind the scenes. So there's a lot of other people in the group. Read the book to the listeners, but it's all about having that built-in support system that can help you really really get there. And it's honestly just not a nice to have, it's a must. I mean, people I'm sure have watched Blue Zones, but things like that, like there's lots of studies around being in community and living longer, right? Because community matters so much. I just heard this at church the other day. When we're babies, we're born and we're immediately looking for someone else. Immediately the
Mm.
first thing we want to do is make a human connection, the first thing, right?
Yeah.
Before
Wow.
anything else
I
even
didn't think
exists.
about
And so
that.
that's how important it is. And in terms of like dollars and cents and ROI, which people also care about, when you write your goals down, you have a 42% chance of getting there. When you talk about them, say it out loud, you got 65%. When you have an accountability partner, you have a 95% chance of hitting
Oh,
those goals.
oh
It
wow.
time
I didn't
matters.
know that
It matters.
statistic.
It
Wow. I
matters.
knew about there's a Harvard study that says if you write your goals down, you're more likely to achieve them than
Yeah.
not. And then if you speak them, I heard that too, but I didn't know about the accountability piece.
And it goes both ways, right? You're helping other people. There's got to be a
Right.
good value exchange.
Right.
But it is
Right.
really, that's the beauty of the community piece, and that's the beauty. Again, this book would not have happened if it weren't for my energy hype squad
Yeah.
saying like, we believe in you, we're investing in you, we're backing this book, we're doing this is happening, and
What
it
if
so matters.
What's the first step for someone if they feel like they really don't have an energy hype squad or a beginning of an energy hype squad? What would your suggestion be?
I think everyone has it. I just think we need to pay attention to how we're investing in it. And I think everything's on the table. So this is interesting. I lead a lot of master classes on networking. So as a professional, right? How do you network? How do you increase your network? How do you do that on LinkedIn? How do you do that in person, right? So I do a lot of work on this, and I had to do a lot of it personally with the book, right? Re-engaging my network to do this. And what I found was some of my biggest backers or some of my biggest partners, I haven't even worked with in like 26 years. Like I'm going to New York City for an event at Chief, which is a big deal. And it came from someone I worked with 26 years ago. We barely have even talked in 26 years, but she's been watching me. I've been watching her, right? So I think just starting those conversations, putting yourself out there, going back to old conversations. And then the biggest piece of advice I would say is once you start those conversations and those warm reconnections with people that know and love you, I always say, who else should I talk to that's interesting in this space? I think that's how I ended up on this podcast, right? Like one of my fellow authors, I was like, who else should I talk to that would be interesting? And they were like, oh, Sue, for sure. You got to talk to Sue. And I was like, great, right?
Okay.
And so that's how
Yeah.
connections are made. And
Yeah.
and now we're in each other's energy hype squad, right? And
Yeah.
so I think it's just like
Cool.
there is an element of putting yourself out there.
Sure.
And you do got to kind of push at the edge of your comfort zone for people that are wildly introverted. And I completely understand that, even as a wild extrovert myself. But just continuing to kind of step by step and just don't leave any stone unturned. Because
Yeah.
people also want to root for you. They want you to win, and they believe in you. And when I put things out there, people are writing back, and I don't even know that they even know I exist, right? But I think putting yourself out there is key too.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that you said people are out there rooting for us. And I can find that little voice in my head, that defeatist little voice talking. And if you listen to it, then it drowns out the fact that there's people out there who are in your corner. It's interesting that you should bring that up, because I feel that people, even if you're introverted, you still can have a conversation with somebody. You just have to look for that person you feel most comfortable with. And chances
Absolutely.
are that's a person who's probably part of your energy hype squad and you don't even know it.
Absolutely. And they're probably out there hoping reaches out to them too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that
True.
was one of the first questions I got from one of my early readers was, wait, I love this notion of big energy, and this was very early days. The book had a backbone at best, but the title kind of scared them. Like, I'm not big energy. I'm quiet. I'm introverted. That's okay. They were like,
Yeah.
this is that is amazing. That's exactly the point. You be you, right? And so big energy is not about having my big, wild, yellow energy. You don't have to have that. And it might not be the right fit for you. And if it's not, I wouldn't want you to try it on, right?
Right.
It's all about that alignment to your own values and knowing, to your point, how do I recharge what's important to me and living deeper into those values. That's the big energy piece.
Yeah. Well, your spark process, if one walks through it, is about finding what's big for you. And let's go back to the language, big or small. What's big to you might not be big to me. What's big to me might not be big to you. So big is it's a word, but we don't have to put the limitation on what we think big is, if that makes sense.
I love that. I absolutely agree. At my launch party, I had these big, huge stars.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I got them from Amazon. They came, oh, you never know online, and they came huge. They were these huge, and I was like, what am I doing with these huge stars? But we used them, and it was so powerful because I had everyone write on there, what is the big dream you are not willing to give up on,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And
Great
so there was
question.
110 people at this party, and everyone wrote on a star. For the most part. And some of the things were, I just want to be a good mom. And they had the word just, and I'm like, don't you just yourself. I
Yeah.
want to be a good mom. It is a huge dream. That's hard. That's
Yeah.
really hard, right? And so I agree. We shouldn't qualify ourselves with if our dreams are big or small. If they're big to us, then they matter.
Then they matter.
Then they're the
Yeah.
right dreams.
That's right. That's right. So I'm thoroughly enjoying our conversation. But we do have to wrap it
Eventually
up.
end.
Eventually end. I know, I hate it. I ask all of my I ask all of my guests the same three questions. So we're just gonna launch into it. The second one's my favorite, so we may actually go a little longer after that one anyway.
Okay.
The first is, please share a book or resource that has had a significant impact on you.
Yes. Yeah. So I got to do a lot of research when I was reading this book. So that's a
I
big part
know.
of the process as an
Yeah,
author,
that was
which is
cool.
a blessing, as you know, too, right? So The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown was really it was something that cracked the vulnerability thing open up for me. And it gave me the language and the permission to stop like worrying about the performance metrics of like the life, right? So it was the beginning of helping me to discover that, having and owning my own truth and having my own voice really was what came out of that too. And that being human is okay. And it's actually our superpower. And that's how we uniquely are going to be positioned to lead in this world, is our own unique creativity. So that was probably one of my favorite books.
I like that, being human, giving ourselves permission to be human.
Yes.
I think, don't you? I think you mentioned it in the book. You're also a perfectionist,
Yes.
so perfectionists don't feel, you don't think you're human, to be, I know I'm a recovering perfectionist. So,
Yes. Me too. I'm slowly inching into recovery. I'm trying.
podcasts have stretched my definition of perfection and what is just good enough. That's a conversation for another day.
Yeah,
But
I imagine.
but we all have those areas. I guess the point is we all have those areas where we feel that perfection is, you can't do anything less than be perfect in that area. And then finding out what that area is and then helping yourself to kind of let go of that
Yeah.
perfection. I don't know. I find that what I think is perfect, nobody's really looking for perfection there anyway. So it's an
Absolutely.
illusion. It's an
Absolutely.
illusion.
Absolutely. And when you get perspective of something like an intensity point, you start to go, does it matter that my house is a mess when
Yeah.
someone's coming over to bring me coffee because I'm lonely and I'm in a chemo chair?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Or
No.
coming out right. No, it doesn't matter anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah. I have a friend of mine tell me, put it on a 40-year time horizon. In
Yeah.
40 years, will it matter?
Yeah.
In 50 years, will it matter? If the
That's
answer
great
is
advice.
no, then, why are you getting all bent out of shape over this thing? So it's good to just reorient your perspective from time to time with situations. We sometimes make things bigger than they really, really are.
Absolutely.
What is one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered the question or expanded on the topic?
So I think on this one, I got a lot of questions on the book too, but what if something gets in your way? And I'm like, oh, it will. What if you get derailed? Oh, no, it will. Right. And so that's always not like, oh, no, you're going to get knocked down. That's not the point. No, that's the fun part, right? Like you're going to fall and you're going to slip and you're going to get back up and back up and back up. So in chapter 5, I talk about, there's a whole section on expect to be derailed. So I just want to remind people, like, you're allowed to slow down, you're allowed to pause, you're allowed to dust yourself up. Like I always tell my kids, which as a therapist could say this is wrong or not, but I'm like, we got 5 minutes to cry about it and then we're moving on, right? And I think that is something that's really powerful that doesn't get talked about enough. And the process of renewal and the process of transformation and like doing life's work is really a cyclical process. And it's not something we master. It's not just a destination. So it's when life knocks you down, don't say like, how did I mess this up? Ask yourself like, what did I learn from this and how am I going to rise differently?
I love the 5-minute cry with that. I heard it said once that crying is the release of your argument with God.
Oh, that's good. That's
I
really
heard that.
good.
I don't remember when. I heard it last year sometime. And in those moments where you just have to cry.
Yep.
And it's very releasing, especially when you give yourself permission to cry, because that's not something people talk about. Like, oh, don't cry. Like, oh, are you weak? You cry. That has that stigma attached to it. But when I heard that quote, it was just so life altering for me. It's like, okay, make it 5 minutes or 6 minutes or however many minutes you need it to be. But I'm releasing something to God.
Absolutely. I
It's
love
amazing
that.
what you tell yourself. What you tell yourself matters, right?
Right. Absolutely. And you need a second to process things. The
Sure.
danger is I think people get very comfortable in the victim mindset. And that's not a place where we're going to ever win, right? And
Right.
it sucks because we do feel like the victim sometimes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's
that's not
hard
a way
not to,
forward.
but I think I had a good friend ask me, do you think things happen to you or for you? And if they happen to you, then that plays the victim mentality. If you take the perspective it happens for you, well, then there's a reason behind it. And it's not really a failure. It's you reframe the failure as either you're winning or you're learning. And,
Yes, absolutely.
rather than a failure. I mean, you can
Yep.
call it a failure, but you could learn from it and you can make it positive.
Absolutely. And is watching for it and paying attention, right? I always tell my kids
Sure.
before they leave in the morning, I'm like, okay, watch for your wonderful today. There's a lot of wonderful out there, but don't wait for it. It's not going to just come to you. You have to actively watch for it,
Yeah.
right? And so if you're watching for people victimizing you or things going wrong, that's also what you're going to see. It just is, right? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of that in the world, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
It's that
yeah,
reticular activating system that you
yeah,
have your brain. If your brain's looking for good things, it's going to find good things. If your brain
yeah,
is in that state of gratitude, you're going to find things to be grateful for. So it's a good reminder to keep our eyes focused on what really matters.
100%.
So, as we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's going to help them change their tomorrow?
Pause for 5 minutes. No phone, no to-do list, and just ask yourself, what do I want more of? And your next step is hidden in that answer.
What do I want more of? Have a pen and paper ready. I love it. I love it. Stacey, how can people find you?
Okay, on the internet, all the places, right? So Bring Your Big Energy is everywhere. My site's under design right now, but it's up and running, of course. But you can buy the book online anywhere books are sold, and the ebook and the paperback are available now. If you enjoy the book, leave a review, but you can buy it anywhere online. On my website, you can join to be a Big Energy Insider to get all of the exclusive updates and behind the scenes and extra tools and workbook materials and more stories and lessons and first dibs on kind of events, because I do a lot of events. I'm on a 10 city tour right now.
Oh, wow. Where are some of your cities on your 10
So
city
I've
tour?
been so far to 2 cities in Michigan. I've been to Scottsdale. I'm looking at my tour map.
Yeah.
Scottsdale, Arizona. And then next up, I go to Chicago, New Jersey, and New York City in May. And then I'm in San Antonio I'm in Boston in July. So I have a whole thing, and part of it
Wow.
is on my website right now, but I'm just finalizing with the book tour where and when I'm going to be everywhere. But that's been a wild ride and super fun. And so that'll all be on my website if people are interested in that. And then all the socials on Bring Your Big Energy, as I said. And then I am recording the audiobook. I just wrapped on my first raw file version yesterday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So the audiobook, which I know is a whole different audience, that will be available in probably, I think, August of this year.
Perfect. Well, Stacey, thank you so much for the gift of your time. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me, and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.